Fire Emblem Three Houses is a masterpiece. There's no question about that. Not only is it packed with strategic RPG goodness and incredible battles, but it also delivers branching paths, layered systems, and some of the best storytelling in the entire franchise. But back on the original Switch, it definitely pushed the hardware. Frame rate dips in battle and around the monastery, a blurry presentation in handheld mode, and this constant sense that the game's vision was being squeezed through the system's limits. So what happens when you run that same build on Nintendo Switch 2? You know, this didn't get an official upgrade. This is purely the Switch 1 game on the Switch 2. What I want to see is it smoother, sharper, or are we still dealing with the same issues? Well, that's what I'm here to look at today. We'll break down the visuals with direct comparisons to Switch 1, test whether the resolution is still all over the place, check out the frame rate, and of course, see if load times are any faster. Now, before we do dig in, just a quick note, I'm a smaller channel that's been running for about 7 years now, covering all things Nintendo Switch. So if you do find this helpful, consider hitting that subscribe button. It really helps get these videos in front of more people, and that support, it's just, well, basically huge. All right, let's get into it. Now first, a quick refresher on the game itself. Fire Emblem Three Houses, it takes place in a continent divided into 3 rival nations. Now each of these nations, they send their best and brightest to study at the Officers Academy. Now this just so happens to sit right at the center of the map. Now you'll be stepping here into the role of a mysterious mercenary turned professor and are quickly asked to lead one of the Academy's 3 student houses. What follows is a story full of political drama, personal sacrifice, and, dependent on your choices, some pretty heavy consequences. Gameplay-wise, then, it's classic Fire Emblem at heart, so I think turn-based tactics on a grid, permadeath if you want it, and a deep focus on positioning, countering, and building your team. But Three Houses also brought in a whole new layer with its monastery system. So basically between battles, you're exploring, teaching, recruiting students, sharing meals, and managing your squad's progression in a way that just made it feel almost like a social sim. So yeah, basically it's one of those rare games where the more you put in, the more you get out. And I've sunk more than 100 hours into this one easily. Honestly, I think it's one of the very best games on the Switch. But yeah, all of this anyway out the way, this isn't a game review. I could basically gush over it for hours. Let's talk if anything has changed. So visually, I've got comparisons on screen right now, Switch 1 versus Switch 2, and aside from one odd thing where the camera angle shifts slightly lower when fast traveling, no idea what that's about, the changes here are pretty minimal at first glance. There's a slight sharpness boost basically, but yes, otherwise it looks nearly identical. But here's the thing I do want to point out. I'm standing still, and anyone who's played this game knows the real visual issue wasn't in the art direction, it was the resolution. The original game used dynamic scaling, and it could get really blurry if you are moving or sprinting around, especially in the monastery and during even certain battles. Mostly magic effects in particular would tank that clarity. Well, I'm happy to say that on Switch 2, after a couple of hours of testing, I noticed no such drops. It looks like we're getting full output at all times. No harsh resolution swings, no murky blur. And honestly, that alone makes a real difference. The same story actually can be said as well in Handheld too. In fact, it benefits even more thanks to the larger screen. You know, everything feels cleaner, a little bit more stable as I said, but also just easier to make out. Also, a quick side note here actually as well, a long-running request for this channel has been to include more handheld footage, and I hear you. I'm actually working on getting the right setup in place as we speak and should have it ready within a week or so, so do expect more of that in future reviews and coverage like this. Load times are also improved, but like realistically, they were rarely on the long side, but here on average, roughly, they are cut down in half. I noticed it in particular when fast traveling, even if on Switch 1 it was never more than a few seconds, here it's a little bit quicker. Now though, the frame rate, and this one's a bit of an odd case. I couldn't get my capture system to play nice with this particular game, still TBD on why, but based on what I've experienced and what's been well documented with this game, Fire Emblem Three Houses has always had performance issues on Switch 1. We're talking consistent frame rate drops in the monastery, stutters during exploration, and If I had to guess, frame pacing problems. That's when the game technically hits 30 FPS, but the speed at which each frame is delivered to the screen isn't consistent. It creates this uneven, slightly jittery motion, even though the frame count looks fine on paper. Basically, it's kind of subtle, but you will see it. And yeah, once you kind of notice it, it's definitely, hard to unsee. But yeah, this also actually showed up during combat as well, especially with magic attacks or anything more demanding visually. Now though, with Switch 2, that issue seems largely solved. The pacing feels much cleaner, transitions are smoother, and even intense battles now hold up better. It's not perfect, I still spotted a few minor fluctuations, and when sprinting through the monastery you'll occasionally get a micro stutter or two, but that is likely just the game streaming in areas as you do unlock doors and move forward, so not particularly a hardware problem. So yeah, basically while it's not night and day, it's absolutely a step forward, and it's one that makes the experience feel noticeably better overall. So the final verdict, is this a game-changing way to play Fire Emblem Three Houses? Absolutely not. I'd still recommend it on either system without hesitation. But it does make a difference, and in some of the very areas that have historically frustrated players, if you're playing on the Switch 2, you will notice the improvement in these parts. For me, it's the smoothness of exploring the monastery, it's a lack of aggressive resolution shifts, it's a combat now running without those kind of minor frame rate drops. All of that adds up to a noticeably better experience. That said though, this is a game I really hope gets a proper upgrade someday. Unlocking 60 FPS exploration, that alone would feel transformative. And sharpening up the jagged aliasing that is visible throughout, it stands out on either system, Switch 1 or Switch 2, that would just, in my opinion, let the world shine the way it's meant to, because honestly, it deserves it. The systems, the cast, the writing, it is all top tier, and they deserve to be presented in that way. So are you a fan of Three Houses? Will you be heading back for another playthrough or maybe diving in for the first time? Let me know in the comments. And if you did enjoy this video, please do consider subscribing. Really helps the channel go. Yeah, keeps me doing more performance coverage just like this. All right, cheers all.